Okay. So now let's go back to our regularly scheduled program. When last we met before the lunch break, I said I'd shown you a whole lot of stuff about SP Blitz first, but I was showing it to you in terms of analyzing either the data over time or else analyzing it since startup. So either since startup or querying some of those tables that track your weight stats over time, perfmon counters, file stats, all that good stuff. Well, SP BlitzFirst is also super useful in real time, but the way that I use it in real time is I like to use, Don says, and God bless him, Don says not near the chatter or stupidity in the Slack chat today. So my wife goes, she's, constantly hearing me talking as I'm doing the webcam or webcast. And I go to leave the webcast yesterday and I walk out there and she's like, "Are you okay? Because it kind of seems like you lost your mind there a couple of times." And I'm like, "Yes, in fact, I did." And it's always funny with that with consulting customers too, because when people bring in money and go, "Here you go, we want you to fix our system," sometimes you get those customers on the other end where they're like, "But we want to use the carbon fiber nanotubes." And I'm like, those don't go in the SQL server. That's not where that goes. So none of that's getting into the recording. No way. Oh, I've got to remember to make sure not to put that part in the recording. Now, when last we met, we were just talking about SP BlitzFirst, and it's okay if the Slack stuff's inside up in the chat. I'm totally all right with that. So when last we met, we were talking about SP BlitzFirst and analyzing it since startup or looking inside the tables. But I often have to use SP BlitzFirst live in real time while the server's on fire. I'm going to put the server back on fire again. I am going to open up SQL Query Stress, and I'm going to go run a load test. So I'm going to load one of the load tests from the mastering classes and have that just go fire off. And then while that runs, I'm going to come over here and run SP BlitzFirst, expert mode equals 1, seconds equals 60. Because these are two of my favorite parameters for, Hadley said you can keep Slack up because those people don't read. It's sad but true. So when I turn expert mode on and set seconds, so there are two parameters there. Expert mode equals 1 gives me way more details. Like the first result set that you saw come back immediately, that's a lot like SP who is active. What this is SP Blitz who. And I'll demo that separately here in a second. It shows you the queries that are running right now at the start of SP BlitzFirst sample. Then expert mode equals 1 will also return more result sets when SP BlitzFirst finishes. It's going to include things like what were the weight stats during the 60-second sample, which files were the most read or written to during the 60-second sample, what perfmon counters changed, all kinds of good stuff. Now, the second parameter, where you see seconds equals 60, you've already by now guessed what that means. What this means is that SQL Server takes us, or we tell SQL Server, take a sample of a bunch of stuff, write it to TempDB, wait for 60 seconds, take another snapshot, and compare the difference between those two. But now notice, it's been going, let me stand out of the way here. Notice it's been going for more than 60 seconds. We're up at like a minute 23. This is normal because if your SQL Server is really on fire, like mine is, if I go in and look at Task Manager, this thing is absolutely getting hammered. SP BlitzFirst has to wait in line for CPU, like we talked about in the last module. Something uses CPU for 4 milliseconds, steps off, goes to the back of the line, and then has to wait until it can get back in. SP BlitzFirst is waiting just like everyone else. Now, during the 60-second sample, it didn't fire up a profiler trace, it didn't start extended event sessions or anything like that. All it's doing is it took a sample, waited 60 seconds, took another sample, and now it needs to analyze what was happening inside that time span. If your server's really on fire like it is here, this isn't unusual to go and see. Now, I don't need it to be that badly on fire, so I'll go ahead and cancel my load test, and you'll notice that SP BlitzFirst finishes pretty much immediately because it's able to get CPU time now. Now let's talk through the results. First set of results up there, I mentioned it's a lot like who is active. It's SP Blitz who. What do I recommend, SP Blitz Who or Who is Active? I am completely fine with either one. The whole reason we even wrote SP Blitz Who was just because at the time, Atom Mechanics SP Who is Active wasn't licensed in a way that we could immediately install it on client servers without asking their permission first. Now we can. And I mean now with Atom Mechanics. Atom Mechanics has changed the licensing on Who is Active so that it's much more consultant friendly and much more third-party friendly. So if we were going to do it all over again today, I don't think we would write SP Who is Active or SP Blitz Who today, but I'll show you why it is still kind of cool and why I still do use it. So that first one, it gives me the list of queries that were running at the time our flight started. Then this result set is exactly the same as what you saw when we were running SP BlitzFirst, just the headline news section, when I ran it to take a 5-second sample. But now that the server's under load, you can see more useful details in here from a time when SP BlitzFirst actually was hitting the server hard, or the server was being hit hard. Remember how I said in SP Blitz, I go and look at the server info? Well, that server info is really useful down here as well. Batch requests a second is how many queries per second we're pulling off. So it tells me it's kind of like the speedometer for SQL Server. CPU utilization, which is nice because before I had this, I used to be the kind of person who would go look at Task Manager. This just makes the process of querying the ring buffers so much easier. Then the number of compilations and recompilations per second that we're getting, the number of queries that are having to recompile, which can indicate problems like people using option recompile, or maybe statistics are constantly changing on some of our tables. The database count and database size, I like having this up just because sometimes I'm surprised by the server, like someone has gone and loaded in a whole lot of data. True story. I was working with a DBA team and we were finding out what was going on a server. We go home for the weekend on Friday. We come back in on Monday and someone had loaded more than 1 terabyte of data over the weekend and hadn't told anybody. So it just made it much more easy to catch as we're going through and looking at why we're having a performance problem. The data had ballooned in size. Now, just like SP Blitz, it gives you a list of prioritized problems. And for each one, because you may not have seen this problem before, I give you a link to go to get more information about each one of those. For example, obviously high CPU utilization, but queries with 10,000x cardinality misestimations, meaning SQL Server thought that one row is going to come back and 10,000 rows are actually coming back. You can see this if you want to go in and look at the query itself. We tell you here is the SPID that it's running on and how long it's been running for. And if you go further across, we'll even tell you here's the time when it started, here's the server that it's coming from, here's the query that's running. And depending on the way that the server's set up, we can also give you the live query plan or the actual query plan, like showing how much progress it's made. What I love this pair of parameters for, expert mode and seconds equals 60, is when I'm trying to do things like a load test. Because a 5-second sample isn't enough because things can be so unpredictable during a load test. I like taking a much longer sample, like say 60 seconds, so that I can get a better picture of what's going on the server. When I'm trying to figure out how overloaded it is, remember when I was reading your wait stats, I said it's very important to look at which wait stat is the top wait time type and how long you've been waiting on that wait stat. Well, we have that here too as well. I'm going to compact this a little on the screen to make it a little bit easier to see. So here, the number one on my particular server, it says the top wait type was CX consumer. For 748 seconds over the last 60 seconds, SQL Server was waiting on this bottleneck. Now, I know what you're thinking, Brent, your math sucks. And you would be right. My math is terrible. I'm unbelievably bad at math. It's hilarious. Math and clocks are two things that I just totally do not do well. I would have sucked as a real developer who had to go through a computer science program. What this means, remember, is you have multiple cores, each of which can have multiple queries stacked up with multiple tasks in each query that are all sitting around waiting on something. The higher that this number is, the more screwed your server is. And everybody also always wants to know what's a good number and what's a bad number. Well, a good number is 0. If your server's not waiting at all, you're in pretty good shape. Anything over 0 is just progressively worse. The larger the number gets, the more screwed your server is. Now, in a 60-second time span, if the server had only spent 10 seconds waiting, I just don't know that I really care about that. But if, like in here, for every second on the clock, we're spending like 15 seconds waiting on this thing, I want to know more about that and what that means. So, and we give them to you in a prioritized order, the biggest wait type first, going down to lower wait types progressively. And we give you the SQL skills link to each of the wait types out there. This comes back to what we did in the last module, interpreting your wait stats and understand what's going on right now. This is basically everything that I want to show you on SP BlitzFirst, and it's a beautiful segue into SP Blitz Cache, because what you always want to do is after you find what the top wait type is, you want to go find the queries that are causing that wait type. So that's when we're going to switch over in SP Blitz Cache. But before I do, are there any questions on SP BlitzFirst? See, now I can know I can take like a 20-second long drink. Before I pop up. And while you do that, if you type in any questions, I'm going to hop up on a web browser over here. Go and open you up. And here. Dimitri says you need to write down all the DBA real-life stories to some book. I've seriously thought about that. Like when the statute of limitation expires on my career, that's when I'm going to be like, okay, so let me tell some stories. And of course, by then, the people will be at different stages in their career. I would never use company names or anything like that. But doggone, I've had some hilarious stories. Jerry says, you recommend running SP Blitz Index get all databases equals 1 for a few different people. Will we be going over the results of running this? Yes, absolutely, yes. To give you a rough idea, so what I'm doing is I'm looking up here on the page at your instant replays. So what I've done is I've gone into training and then my videos, and then if you scroll down through here, you're going to have there it is. How I use the first responder kit. So if I go, Dimitri says, wow, I have something like 40 to 50 seconds delay. If you want, refresh your page and it may suddenly, and actually I'm just going to type it. Try reloading your browser. Try not using pigeons for an internet connection. No one will laugh and make sure that he gets that. There we go. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to click on how I use the first responder kit, and then in here over on the right-hand side, it's got the list of modules that we'll cover. The videos from this morning are actually already up, so when you want to go in later and revisit, look at that handsome devil right there. And same thing with the end of these modules. Tonight, while I'm drinking tequila, I'll be putting the replays up here. So yes, for yours, Jerry, we will absolutely be looking at SP Blitz Index as well. So next up is looking at SP Blitz Cache to find the queries that are causing your top waits. So when we were looking at your wait stats, I was doing different diagnostics. I'm like, for this wait type, do this. For this other wait type, do that. I took the 6 most common wait types because with SQL Constant Care, Hadley says, I only have a few items in my list in each section, like 11 items in the first section and 7 items in the second. Why do I have so much more stuff in SP BlitzFirst? Because my server was on fire. I lit a torch and I was just nailing this thing. And the worse load that you put your SQL server under, the more results you're going to get back there. So yes, you want as few results as possible. Now that my server's not doing anything, watch this. So now when I put in SP BlitzFirst mode, expert mode equals 1, now I didn't do 60 seconds just because I didn't want to wait 60 seconds. Look how small this is. So the first result set had nothing because no queries were running. Here, I've got hardly anything at all. Then under weight stats, I've got hardly anything there. And then on files, I've got hardly anything there. So the amount that you get is directly proportional to how bad the smoke is coming out of your SQL server. Because also, too, when I write stuff, whenever I write scripts, I always try to write stuff so that I don't tell you things that don't matter. If you don't have to worry about something, I don't want to show it on the screen. And even in this mode right here, like the only reason that I put so much up here is just to show you, to kind of prove that nothing is going wrong on the server. If you take out expert mode, you get even less, because I want to not overwhelm people. I want to just take a 5-second sample and go, here you go, no problems found. Life goes on. Try running our more advanced scripts if you want to get more details about something. Okay. So back over here on SP Blitz Cache, so based on whatever your top weight types are, I said now we got to run SP Blitz Cache or SP Blitz Index to find the problems that are causing those top weight types. Usually I'll look at the plan cache before. L Fox says this shows what happened in the last at seconds. Exactly. Yes. Starting from this point forward, it's not like what happened before now, but what's going to happen in the next at seconds. Think of it that way. Which leads to an interesting question. Okay, so there's one other thing. Can you see what happened in the past? Yes. If you have been running SP BlitzFirst logged to a table. Remember how your prerequisites were that you wanted to log SP BlitzFirst to tables and I had you set up the agent jobs? Well, check this out. I can say SP BlitzFirst output database name equals DBA tools, output schema name equals DBO, output table name equals BlitzFirst, as of equals 2020 0410. Was this server at, let's see what this is, select get date. What's time zone have I got my server in? Oh, it's in Pacific. Okay, cool. So as of 10 o'clock a.m. So if I get this right, what this will tell me is, and I don't know that I have, did I set up the job right? Top 100 star from DBA tools, DBO BlitzFirst, because it's probably in UTC time and I probably got to get the time exactly right. Let's dump that out. And I'm going to skew the time just because I'm going to show you why that doesn't matter. So what this does is it looks in the table for the 15 minutes before and the 15 minutes after. So it'll show you what was happening around that time, last night or whenever you need to do the troubleshooting. This does only return the headline news result sets during that time range. If you want all of the other detail tables, like the stuff that we saw in expert mode, you got to go query those tables. But the data is there if you want to go through and examine it. All right. So now back over to SP Blitz Cache. These are all good questions. I get so excited when y'all ask questions that A, I know the answer to, and B, that are the kinds of questions that I would ask if I were you. Dimitri says, yes, as I remember in one stored procedure, there's a last minutes back or something. That is indeed SP Blitz Cache. And I'll show it to you since we'll talk about SP Blitz Cache. That is, I think, the first time anybody's ever caught that, or mentioned that parameter in this class, because I love that parameter. Okay, so now, and I'm actually going to take a note of that because I don't usually show that, and I need to, minutes back. So now, in your first responder kit, now that we're going to talk about SP Blitz Cache, in your first responder kit, in the SP Blitz Cache module, I give you a decoder ring of the 6 most common weight types. Out in the entire SQL Server population at large in constant care, these are the 6 most common weight types that most people experience as their biggest first bottleneck that they have to go and solve. So I give you a little plain text explanation inside there. This is the kind of thing that's useful to copy paste out into your own kind of diagnostic toolkit. I'm hoping that in the next version or two of this class, I'm actually going to give you an Azure Data Studio notebook that will contain the script outputs for these to make it easier for you to tell the story along with some of my favorite parameters. The problem that I run into is not a lot of people use Azure Data Studio, and it actually has really crappy performance with SP BlitzCache. So I'm going to do a quick poll to see how many of you have used it before. Have you used Azure Data Studio? Yes, and I've used notebooks. Yes, but not notebooks. No. Anonymous, limit 1. There we go. So I'll let y'all fill that in. So several of you, lots of you are saying no there. All right. So that's kind of what I feel about. That's kind of how I feel about Azure Data Studio. I adore it. It's beautiful. It has so many cool things, but I got to meet you where you are. I want you to use the tools that you use every day. So I haven't been showing that yet. Demetrius, I've never heard of it before. It's really cool. And I have a notebook primer on my blog post. So if you go Azure Data Studio notebook site, BrentOzar.com, these things are really cool. And I don't think, I think this is about the best place to go. I'm going to paste this in. I don't know that I have a video. I don't think I have a video in there about it. Oh, let's get rid of that big old notebook icon. But they're really cool. What they're really good for is like run books, if you want to do the same process over and over again. So in a next version or two of this class, I'll include an Azure Data Studio notebook, and I'll walk you through using it. But for now, just take that based on your top weight type section, copy paste that into your favorite diagnostic script, just so that as you're troubleshooting weight stats, it's going to make it a little easier for you to figure out how to run SP BlitzCache. Now, let's figure out, because this is about how I use the first responder kit. Let's say that I have to go do this on this SQL server. Let's say SP BlitzFirst, since startup equals 1, let's go find out what this server's biggest weight type is. Okay, in my case, my number 1 by a long shot is SOS scheduler yield, meaning SQL Server is waiting on a CPU scheduler in order to get more time to execute queries. So over in my handy dandy notebook file, or my handy dandy markdown file, I'm going to say, out of SP BlitzFirst, in 7 hours of uptime, 28 hours of waits on SOS scheduler yield, CPU, 18 on CX packet, I'll say hours CX packet, 4 hours of CX consumer. Based on this, I want to find queries using a lot of CPU, try to fix those first. If not, I may need to look at additional CPU power or changing CPU related settings. So now let's go do it. So next up in our arsenal is SP BlitzCache. Now, because of my top weight type, because my top one was SOS scheduler yield, I would go back to that Google Chrome window and go see, all right, what does SOS scheduler yield mean? I need to sort my queries by CPU. Now it's time for SP BlitzCache. Sort order equals CPU. So what is SP BlitzCache and what does it do? Who is your daddy and who does he work for? Probably no one understands that reference. Oh, did I get it backwards, Chandra? I probably did. Let's go back and look. I said, I sure did. Good catch. CX consumer. This is what I need y'all standing around whenever I'm taking notes so that you can always catch the kinds of things that I do. And Tim says, I use Jupyter, formerly IPython notebooks for analytical projects. It's the same exact thing. Azure Data Studio is exact same Jupyter notebooks. Now, not 100% file compatible. You can't just take a T-SQL notebook and go throw it in another tool. It has to be Azure Data Studio because it's got the T-SQL kernel, I guess. This is where you can see where my knowledge is starting to fall off. They also do PowerShell notebooks too as well. I don't do that either, but I do the T-SQL notebooks. Those are kind of awesome. Eamon says, is there a way to flush wait stats after fixing some issues in prod without restarting and affecting the performance? See, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you just want to log SP BlitzFirst to table so that then that way you can go back and check what your wait stats are during a range of time. See, for example, if I go back over select star from DBA tools, DBA tools.dbo, BlitzFirst, wait stats, deltas. Tim says I am correct. As my grandfather would say, even a blind squirrel can get a nut sometimes. Where check date is greater than or equal to, and I'm just going to pick a time. See how mine is, kind of broken out by time here? If I said at 9:30 a.m. I fixed a problem, well, I would just say I'm looking for my wait stats greater than 9:30 a.m. So don't clear the SQL Server's wait stats. Just look in your table for since that time span when you wanted to look at the new numbers. But good. So I should answer, why am I saying that? What's the, you are correct there. So Eamon, why would I tell you not to reset your wait stats? The thing is, whenever you're doing performance tuning tracking, you really want to look at more than just wait stats. You probably also want to look at things like file stats, perfmon counters, index usage statistics, and we don't have a way to clear all of those. If there was one command I could give you that would reset all the DMVs, I would do that in a heartbeat. Because there are times when I've done a big index tuning project, I've done a big query tuning project, and they're like, the server can't go down, but I can't reset all these DMVs to no new numbers. So Phil Hartman was such a genius. Jonathan says something, he says, not too off topic. Dude, no, that is beautifully on topic, and we will absolutely nail that. Side note for myself, when I go to edit this video, I have to find the border between when we talked about BlitzFirst and BlitzCache. This is going to be challenging. So hold on a second. I'm going to take a pause here while I set in a little bit of a border there so I can find it when I go look for it. Now let's talk about BlitzCache. I mean, no, if you have more questions about BlitzFirst, by all means, go for it, because that's what I'm here for. Because I see LFox typing, and I don't want to cut off LFox. Not that there's anything about LFox. LFox, I should give you a prize for that, because I always love it when someone actually asks that. The other button, LFox says, this morning I told you about 2 magic buttons for SQL Server. One of them was RCSI. The second one is forced parameterization. Forced parameterization, this button has no effect unless you need it. And when you need it and you push this button, it's one of the buttons that takes CPU from like 90% down to 10%. It's unbelievable. But you only just need it under very specific circumstances. When you need it, you really need it. And it's funny, you will actually see when, who is it that just asked about the plan cache? Jonathan. Jonathan might actually need to push that magic button, and we'll talk about how you know and why. All right, now finally, not finally, not necessarily. Eamon says, what are the cons of forced parameterization? You know what? I'm going to write that down. So because it is a good question, so cons of forced parameterization. I'm writing it down so that when we get to that part of SP BlitzCache that I can talk through that. See Carolyn talking as well, or writing as well. See, how long have we been going? Oh, 46 minutes. Well, that's not a bad time to take a break. Okay, so let's do this. All right, let's talk about forced parameterization. It's always tricky to figure out how long I need to go before a bathroom break. Looking at what do I want to tell a story? I need to tell the SP BlitzCache story start to finish. Okay, so let's take a bio break. Unless as I'm typing in, you may have other questions. If you ask other questions, I'll keep going for a minute. But otherwise, we're going to take a 15-minute bio break. Let me pull open a 15-minute timer. So 15-minute timer, and I'll put your music on for you because y'all seem to like my dance music for some reason. Oh! Are there remove columns in SP BlitzCache? How would you remove columns if you wanted to? I think you mean like on SP BlitzCache when I run it, How could I get columns out of it? I'm wondering why you would do that. The only thing I can think of as to why you would want to do that is I bet you want to copy paste into Excel. And the answer to that is SPBlitzCache export to Excel equals 1. When you run it with export to Excel, it simply skips the columns that would break when you copy paste them into Excel. So for example, you don't get the query plan, and if I remember right, you get a shorter query text. Not 100% positive on that one. So that might be what you're asking. If not, tell me what you're trying to do, and I might have another way to pull it off. Oh. No, I mean the DBCC statement is how I would free that plan's cache. Yes, exactly. Yes. If you run SPBlitzCache with ExpertMode equals 1, way over off to the right-hand side, there is a thing that will let you go remove that plan from the cache. That's exactly what that does. All right, so now y'all are all starting to ask SPBlitzCache questions. So let me tell the SPBlitzCache story. We'll take a 15-minute bio break, and when we come back, I'll go through and show you how to use SPBlitzCache. And I love that y'all are excited enough that you're starting to use this already. All right, so we will take a 15-minute bio break, and we'll regroup in 15 minutes at, it's like 8 minutes after the hour, 9 minutes after the hour, 8 minutes after the hour.